It has polarised public opinion and political parties, but now the gender reforms proposed under the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon have reached the end of the road, for now at least. The Scottish Government has announced it's dropping legal action aimed at overturning a challenge brought forward by the UK Government. It had argued that the bill passed at Holyrood, which would have made it easier for people here to change their legal sex, would have an impact on UK-wide legislation. So, where does this highly charged debate go from here? Our political correspondent Phil Sim reports.
They thought this was the moment of victory. Almost exactly a year ago, trans rights campaigners celebrating after MSPs passed a long-promised bill to streamline the process for changing one's legally recognised sex. But within weeks, the UK government has stepped in to veto it, saying it cut across Westminster equalities law. An initial legal challenge by Scottish ministers was thrown out, and back in the same chamber, they have now conceded that fighting on won't help anyone.
To carry this process on would impact, again, negatively on the trans community.
Trans rights groups have waited years for reform, so this comes as a blow.
We're bitterly disappointed about the decision to appeal the judgment, but because the bill that was passed last year by a majority of MSPs at our Parliament would have really significantly improved the process trans men and women use to update the sex recorded on their birth certificates, and with the appeal not going forward, that means that at the minute we're stuck with the intrusive and difficult process that exists at the minute.
The celebrations now are for campaigners who oppose the reforms, saying they would impact on women's rights.
The contrast to last year is incredible. I mean, we were right up to the wire, close to Christmas. Did feel as though we were in the situation where Nicola Sturgeon was the Grinch who'd just stolen our Christmas. And this has been a very nice present that we know that the immediate threat of this legislation has been lifted.
The bill can't become law while that UK veto known as a Section 35 order is in place. But Scottish ministers are keeping it in their back pocket in case that might change.
However, the UK Government's intervention means that the bill cannot proceed to royal assent. It remains a bill passed by the majority of this Parliament, and we will not be withdrawing it. Our offer is still there. If the current UK Government is willing to work together on this, we will happily sit down with them. If a future UK Government are willing, we will do so with them, so that the Section 35 could be lifted and the bill progresses.
But the Conservatives certainly aren't minded to shift.
We warned all along that this would happen, but the SNP government didn't listen. Instead, they've spent time and taxpayers' money on a doomed legal battle to revive laws which the majority of the Scottish public do not want.
This might not be the very end of the court battle. The Scottish Secretary says he's going to try to recover costs from the Scottish Government. So they may see each other in court again yet.
Well, Phil is at Holyrood for us tonight. Phil, so we now know that that legal action has been dropped, but presumably the issue of gender recognition and calls for reform, the very things that have been so polarising, are still there.
Yeah, I mean, for all the talk of the bill not being withdrawn, it is effectively in limbo. It's not going anywhere. I think the government hoped that they could help to move this whole issue on, that by passing this legislation, they could help move the whole question of trans rights forward. Instead, they got stuck in the middle of what is a very polarised debate. And now they need to find other ways to try to deliver for the trans community. So they're talking about improving gender identity healthcare, about legislation to ban conversion therapy, and about strengthening human rights. If it was just about this veto power, about Section 35 of the Scotland Act, I think maybe they would have wanted to fight on, because they're very worried that could set a precedent, and they say they will fight any future use of that power by the UK government. But ultimately, I think they really just didn't want trans people to end up being caught up in the middle of a constitutional row between their two governments.
OK, Phil Sim at Holyrood, thank you.